Wood rots. Always has. Always will. And, every civilization that failed to understand that lost ships, homes, weapons, and, lives. The Vikings didn't just understand rot. They bullied it into submission. Pine tar and ash weren't folk remedies or backward superstition. They were industrial-scale preservation systems that kept ships seaworthy, tools alive, and timber standing in some of the wettest, coldest environments on Earth. If you want to understand how old-world people survived without hardware stores or chemicals, this is where the real knowledge starts. Why pine tar and ash mattered more than steel. Before steel hulls, before pressure-treated lumber, and, before the chemical soup sold today as protection, rot was the silent killer. Fungi, bacteria, moisture and insects worked together like an enemy alliance. Vikings fought back with chemistry they didn't call chemistry. Pine tar sealed wood fibres from oxygen and water. Ash altered the surface chemistry and created an environment hostile to decay. Together they formed a system so effective that even now traces of tarred Viking ships are still chemically detectable today. This wasn't guesswork. Tar production was a serious operation. Entire forest sections were managed specifically for resin-rich pine. Archaeology shows large tar pits producing hundreds of litres at a time. That tells you something. This wasn't a hobby. This was infrastructure. Pine tar is distilled survival, not just sticky goo. Real pine tar comes from slow pyrolysis. That means heating resin-heavy pine wood in a low-oxygen environment, so the tar sweats out instead of burning away. The Vikings preferred roots, stumps and heartwood because, resin concentrates there. More resin means thicker, darker, longer-lasting tar. To make it from scratch today, you stack split pine in a sloped pit lined with clay or stone. You cover it with turf or soil to choke off oxygen. Then you light it from the top and let it smoulder for hours or even days. Gravity pulls the liquefied tar down into a collection channel or vessel. The smell is aggressive, sharp, smoky, sweet and bitter at the same time. That smell is rot losing the war. Good pine tar is not watery. It should be thick enough to cling, but fluid enough to brush when warmed. Vikings reheated tar before use, thinning it slightly so it penetrated deeper into wood grain. That penetration is the entire point. Surface coating alone is useless long-term. Wood rot doesn't survive without oxygen and moisture. Rot organisms need three things: moisture, oxygen, food. Pine tar, attacks all three. It fills pores, repels water, and seals off air exchange. The resin acids in tar also have natural antifungal properties. Modern lab analysis, interestingly, confirms what Vikings learned the hard way. Tar creates a chemically hostile environment for decay. This is why Viking ships survived those long sea voyages. Salt water didn't rot them because the tar barrier prevented saturation. And when you hear that Viking longships were light and flexible, just understand that tar was part of that equation. Rot makes wood brittle. Tar keeps it elastic. Ash dip wasn't superstition, it was chemical warfare. Ash comes from hardwood fires. Oak, beech, or ash tree itself works best. When mixed with water, ash creates lye. Not industrial lye, but enough alkalinity to matter. This alkaline solution breaks down organic residues, kills surface organisms, and slightly etches the wood, opening pores for deeper tar penetration later. You know, Vikings didn't always write this down, but practice shows the pattern. Ash wash first, tar second. Sometimes ash alone was used for tools or fence posts driven into soil. Soil contact is where rot accelerates fastest. Ash changes the pH at the surface and, well, discourages fungal growth. To make an ash dip, sift clean white ash into water and let it steep. You want a slippery alkaline solution, not mud. Submerge wood or brush it on heavily. Let it dry completely. This step matters. Wet wood sealed with tar traps, moisture inside, and, well, guarantees failure. The tar and ash combo is stronger than either alone. Ash opens the grain and sanitizes the surface. Tar then seals and preserves. Used together, they outperform many modern treatments, especially when reapplied periodically. Vikings didn't expect permanence. They expected maintenance. Survival cultures don't believe in set it and forget it. This mindset is, really crucial. Wood preservation is a relationship, not a one-time fix. Why this mattered from longships to World War II. Tar never disappeared, it scaled. Pine tar derivatives were still used well into the industrial age. Naval vessels relied on tarred rigging for centuries. Even during World War II, wooden components, crates, pilings, and temporary structures were often tar-treated because petroleum-based chemicals were prioritized elsewhere. Old methods never vanished. They just went quiet. Modern pressure-treated lumber uses copper compounds that, leach into soil and water. Vikings, on the other hand, use forest chemistry that return to the ground without poisoning it. There's a lesson there for anyone paying attention. Applying Viking rot-proofing today without, any romantic nonsense. If you're building a shed, a dock, a fence, or even wooden tool handles, this knowledge is honestly immediately usable. Start with dry wood. Always dry. Brush or dip in ash solution and allow full drying time. Then you'll want to warm your pine tar until it flows easily. Apply generously. Let it soak. Wipe excess. And repeat if needed. For ground contact wood, focus heavily on the buried section. Multiple coats. Heat helps penetration. Some modern users, thin tar slightly with raw linseed oil to improve flow. A practice that's actually consistent with historical adaptation, even if, Vikings probably used animal fats instead. For boats, tar is still king. Synthetic sealants crack. Tar flexes. And honestly, that flexibility is exactly why Viking ships survived wave stress that would just tear rigid coatings apart. Mistakes that can ruin the process, and fast. Using kiln-dried lumber that's sealed too quickly, it traps internal moisture. So, applying tar cold, it just leaves it sitting right there on the surface. Skipping ash pre-treatment, that actually shortens the lifespan. Using softwood ash instead of hardwood, that reduces alkalinity. These aren't minor errors. They decide whether your work lasts 5 years or 50. Also, real pine tar matters. Modern pine tar products are often diluted or chemically altered. If it pours like water at room temperature, it's wrong. Why serious historians and survivalists should care. This isn't reenactment fluff. This is applied historical engineering. Vikings didn't survive because they were lucky. They survived because they understood materials at a level most people today don't. Wood was their steel, tar was their polymer science. Learning this reconnects you to a lineage of practical intelligence that doesn't rely on supply chains or factories. Forest, fire, time, and knowledge. That's it. So, how can you use this knowledge right now? You start small. Try making tar in a controlled pit and, practice ash-dipping tool handles. It's all about taking those first steps. Tar a fence post and compare it to untreated wood over the seasons. Document the results. This is experimental archaeology you can actually do in your backyard. If you're building off-grid, restoring wooden gear, or prepping for long-term resilience, this isn't optional knowledge, it's foundational. And if you're here for Old World prep, you already know why this matters. Ancient solutions that still work are honestly pretty rare. This one is proven by centuries of survival, war, trade, and weather. If this deep dive gave you something new, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Old World Prep, share this with someone who still thinks history is dead, and keep these methods alive by using them. That's how real knowledge survives.